Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 738 to 739 for the 2nd to the 3rd of March. I have already published the frontline changes report. You can check it out over on the various platforms, YouTube, Rumble. And okay, so I'm going to start out, continue with the strategy and tactical reporting. And the first thing first is the Ukrainian claimed another Sukhoi 34 to be shot down over eastern Ukraine. So I have nothing to talk about this. They just shot down somewhere in the east. And so let's continue over to the southern front. Over at the Crimean region, the Ukrainians launched a mass drone attack over towards Feodosia. Feodosia is actually this port city, and the alleged target is some fuel facilities. So a total of 38 drones was actually being mentioned to be attacking this location. The Russians actually fired a lot of different systems from S-400 to the Pantsir S-1, as well as there's rifles and using rifles, I guess. And they shot down 36 of these drones. So two of these drones actually kind of fell. One lost its course, fell on a highway, and I think another one hit a pipeline. So out of the 38, there's two actually got through, which means that the Ukrainians will probably know what to do next time. They will launch like more than that, 60 maybe. So to overwhelm the surface to the air defense systems over on the Russian side. Over at the Kherson Front, fighting reported at Krinky. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, this actually double confirms that Krinky is still under Ukrainian control, or at least partially under Ukrainian control. The Russian forces launched an attack into Krinky. Actually, it's over here. So they launched an attack in this direction, but they got fought back, and some of these Russian soldiers died during this operation, and they have to redraw out back into the forest region. This is actually geolocated. This fighting actually is geolocated. So the 38th Marine Brigade is still operating in this area here. So this actually confirms that the Ukrainians are still at Krinky. So this is a double confirmation, and this also makes any claims that Krinky was lost to the Russians, or the Russians have captured Krinky, to be absolutely invalidated. So which is why it's always very important. Like I always say, it's very important to be careful about information. Like a lot of exciting stuff tends to be wrong. Just like the one at the Avdiivka direction, where the 3 towns are still not captured. Over the opposite shore, over at Shevchenkove, a Buk M1 air defense system was hit by the Russians by using a missile strike. So another hit over here. So this is actually interesting, I would say, that the Ukrainians have basically suddenly popped up a lot of air defense systems, despite that over the past 2 months they has been bombarded by so much airstrikes. So maybe they are pushing all their assets, the air defense assets, towards the frontline region from the western part of Ukraine. So we move on to the Zaporizhzhia Front. So this is the Zaporizhzhia city. This is the city, and this is the front line. And there's fighting over these frontline regions. Russians are attacking Ukrainian forces at Nestyanka. This is actually more like a positional. And then there is also reported fighting south of Zhyvony. According to the Ukrainian sources, Russians are attacking at Verbove, northwest of Verbove, as well as Robotine. The Ukrainian forces counterattack at Robotine. There's a bit of things to really talk about in this region here. More and more indications shows that the Russian forces have been ejected entirely out of Robotine. They have totally out of it. The latest is actually the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioning about fighting west of Novoprokopivka. And this is actually very, very weird, because Novoprokopivka is here. This is Novoprokopivka. And to mention fighting in this area here is a bit weird, that the Russians are pushing in this direction, which means that the Ukrainians may have re-established control along all these front lines. And there is no doubt that the Russians did enter Robotine and actually went very far. but it looks like they did not manage to hold, that the Ukrainians managed to push them out, or the Russians do not dare to stay inside, because staying in position is always a way to die. Which is why trench warfare is such a surprise in this war, because no one expected trenches to be still so relevant in today's age. So that's a bit weird. So the Ukrainians reported this attack on the western part of Novopokrovka. So my assumption right now is the Russians are pushed out. Ukrainians have actually managed to secure the line. Tentatively, there is no indications that the Ukrainians have captured this entrenchment on the south eastern part of Robotine just yet. So we will continue to monitor. Firm Ukrainian positions is located here. This is actually an airstrike, if I'm not wrong. Yep, it's an airstrike. So we will continue to monitor. The Russians are pushing in these directions. They are trying to push out from Verbove region. So the situation remains to be very dynamic, and the Ukrainians have done a good job superseding my expectation that the entire salient may fall, because the Russians have made such a huge push, and it can mean two different things, but I will talk about it in the conclusions. So that's all from the from this Zaporizhzhia region. There is some shelling reported at Dobropilya, but no, nothing important. We move on into the Donetsk Front. So this is the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, the Russian forces are attacking at Prione, Novodonetsky, Voleda, Vodian, Novomikhailivka, Boyeda, Georgievka, south of Krasnohorivka, and Ukrainians are counter-attacking at Boyeda and Bobeda. The ones over here, Prione is more positional, and Voleda and Vodian is also more positional. These are all like fire missions. They are just firing. They are not attacking in the assault. The rest are assault. So, and in this area here, Novomikhailivka, there is some news. The Russian forces have penetrated deeper into the center of Novomikhailivka, according to the Russians, and they have reached the church. But the Ukrainians are still holding a very strong defense. This area here is being attacked or shot through by the Ukrainians. So this is not the kind of firm control. Things, the border will change very easily. We move up north. Ukrainian forces are counter-attacking at Boyeda, I think, or Bobeda. This is going to be very difficult. The Russians have not been able to push out from this area here. Previously, the Russian forces have been, once upon a time, taken Bobeda, and then they have to redraw because the Ukrainians counter-attacked and they cannot hold a position. So now we are seeing a bit of a similarity where this town seems to be really difficult to hold, and the Russian forces fail to really push out of this area here, and the Ukrainians are now putting pressure, particularly from the south. So we will continue to monitor and see what is the situation at Bobeda or Bojeda, and we move on further up north. The situation at Krasnohorivka is interesting because the Russian forces have attacked, and the Russian sources continue to claim the Russians are attacking in the south into the city itself. The Ukrainians have not acknowledged this at all. So this is now a parallel universe right now. The Russian forces basically claim, or rather Rybar claimed that they are now on the 3rd Street. They are now moving up to this 8 Berezhnya Street. So we will continue to monitor and see what is this situation, because the Russian side is a bit, like the Russian reports is a bit too specific to be wrong. But we will continue to see how this goes, because the Ukrainians still have not acknowledged this just yet. Maybe Deep State UA is trying to hold back the information until there is a geolocation happening. So then they have no choice but to reveal the information. So that's all. Moving into the Avdiivka Front. This is the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, the Russian forces continue the Avdiivka offensive with fighting reported at Nevelsky, Performaysky, at Tonenki, Olivka, and Berdaichi. Ukrainian forces counter-attack towards Stepove, Berdaichi, Olivka, and Tonenki. So this is the strategic situation over at this front line. And as per the geolocations, this area here continues to more or less passively confirm that the Russians have not captured the entire of these 3 settlements. The Ukrainians are geolocated, like there's an Abrams tank destroyed over here. the Russians infantry getting massacred by Bradley over here. And even the furthest point that the Russians have went is still basically at this gray zone here. And further south, I think Russian forces here, flag being raised here at Avdiivka. So you can see that it's still all within very firm Russian controlled regions or taken regions. The only one that is new is Donetsk, with the Russian raising a flag in the southeastern part of Donetsk. So otherwise, you see the Ukrainians has actually arrived in this area here, invalidating the Russian claims of this finger. So Russians have been pushed back or killed off in this area here, but they then managed to firm control over this area in the southeastern part. So these three towns is definitely still remains intact, which means that the Ukrainian lines still remains intact as well. So the previous reports that the Russians have captured these three towns, as I did mention, this is only based on Russian reports. This information is totally inaccurate. So if you look at the Ukrainian mapping, this seems to be more accurate. So tentatively, so we will continue to monitor and see how this progress. And I saw a lot of people get triggered. When I say the attack or the Russians offensive operation has screwed up, which is true, based on the video footages that came out, based on the lack of progress on the front line. Like, I mind you, this frontline change is not one day, it's over 2 days. This report is like a 2-day report. It's a 2-day report. So in the entire Russian offensive have basically bogged down because the Ukrainians either have performed better under Sirsky, or maybe Sirsky arrival able to allow them to have better tactics, or it could be that reinforcement has arrived, or the Russians got overconfident and actually overcommitted their infantry and assault, and then they lost a lot of unnecessary casualties as a result, slowing down their offensive. You have to understand, when people die, they need to spend resources to send, or people injured, they have to send resources to bring them to the rear, bring them to the few hospitals and everything. It will slow down offensive, and they will make the commanders on the ground rethink what they are doing. So there is also an airstrike reported at Chertany. So definitely, the Russians are still not slowing down just yet, but definitely the frontline changes is definitely not keeping up with the hype. We move on to the Niu-York Front. And the Niu-York Front, the Ukrainian forces attack at Pivdene as well as New York. So this is almost getting more and more common than usual, but there's totally no information about all these things. Moving on over at the Bakhmut Front. So this Bakhmut city, this is the southern flank. At the southern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the Russian forces attack in the northern part of Klishevka at Klishevka, Andriivka, and Kudyomivka. Ukrainian forces counterattack over at the Klishevka region. So this is the current situation in the southern flank. Nothing really to talk about. Moving into the northern flank. At the northern flank, the Russian forces are still attacking in the Bodanivka region. Ukrainian forces counterattack over there as well. Russian forces are still storming the city of the town of Ivaniske. Ukrainian forces counterattack over this area here. So the front line have not really changed just yet, but according to the Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian side, they say that the situation at Ivaniske is extremely bad. They say that the chances of them losing this settlement is very, very high. So the Ukrainian open source intelligence have basically, or analysts have confirmed that Ivaniske is likely to fall. This actually echoes what DPA have said quite a week ago, I guess, a few days ago. So we all have the same opinion. So let's see how this progress. Then moving on to the Siversk Front. So at the Siversk Front, fighting is not reported at Bilohorivka anymore. Fighting is now reported towards Bakhmut, according to the Ukrainian side. So the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported about this. So nothing much. I don't think this is going to do anything. So that's all from the Siversk Front. We move into the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, the Russian forces are still attacking Terny and Yampolivka, with Ukrainian forces counterattacking at Terny. So that's all from the Kreminna Front. This is the usual right now. This is the new norm over here. And we move on. Nothing over the SITREP Front. We move into the Kupyansk Front. So this is the Kupyansk Front. This Kupyansk city. And at the Kupyansk Front, the Russian forces are attacking at Sinkivka and Terbaivka. Ukrainian forces are attacking at Sinkivka and Terbaivka. And honestly, I think the real actual side that is on the initiative right here is actually the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are the ones making the real push. They are pushing at Avdiivka, as per we reported previously. The Ukrainians have seemingly taken half of Avdiivka already, so which means it negates the Russian claims that they have captured Avdiivka, or they basically taken it back from the Russians. So that's it from the Kupyansk Front. And in the border region, there's only one in the north of Sumy. There is a Krasnopol, I think it's a missile, if I'm not wrong, hitting the Kochakivka. There is some Ukrainian forces over there, and then it got hit, which is kind of interesting because it looks pretty congested over there, and they are able to find all these enemy equipments. So that's it. This is the summary for the day of 738 to 739 for the 2nd to the 3rd of March. And thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. And now to the conclusions. So just now I mentioned about certain things. I believe I was talking about Robotine. Yeah. So at this Orikhiv sector, the Russian forces currently is pushing in this direction, and they have been pushed out. Based on my own opinion, I don't think they are in Robotine anymore. The Ukrainian forces have basically pushed them out. Although I'm not sure if they were there to put troops within Robotine itself, but the Russians definitely is not inside anymore. And this prompted the Ukrainian Defense Ministry to say that the fighting is coming on the western part of Novoprokopivka, which is over here. So there is this heavy entrenchment around here. This heavy entrenchment is not taken by the Ukrainians just yet. There is no indication to show that the Ukrainians are there, which means that this is actually still under Russian control. But the Russians are not in Robotine, and the failure to double down on the Ukrainians desperation during those early days of the offensive, or the mass offensive in this area here, bogged down by the remote mining, seems to really suck the entire momentum out of the Russians. So this is the current situation. But I also have to emphasize there's a possibility that the Russians could be doing this on purpose. That means that they actually make a heavy push, drawing Ukrainian reinforcement into this area here to really hold this line and do whatever desperate thing they need to do. But this is actually not the main push. The main push is probably still at Avdiivka, and this is just to create some chaos over on the planning and decision-making side of the Ukrainians. That is also possible, although it does sound like a coup to the pro-Ukrainians, but I mean, this is a possibility. Because, again, the inability to really push through and capture this area here is, it would be rather disappointing to people who are expecting that the Russians are able to do much more. So that's what it is. It is what it is. And a similar situation also unfolds over at the Avdiivka Front as well. The Russian forces was expected after the initial rumors of the capture of the 3 settlements. End up, they never actually went that far. As far as the evidence go, based on the information, like you can see, it was on the leap year, the leap day, 29th of February, that was declared that the settlements was captured. But as far as we can tell, the front line remains to be more or less where it was, as per what the Ukrainians have said it is. So this is, in fact, the Ukrainians don't even think that most of Donetsk is actually under Russian control. As you can see, the Ukrainian mapping is actually still claiming that the whole of Donetsk is under Ukrainian control, but this is of course invalidated because there is a Russian flag being raised on the northeastern part of Donetsk. So the situation continues to be difficult. Actually, it's not so smooth sailing. Whoever on the Russian side throwing this fake information out is definitely causing some problems for sure. So it could be a case where I have no idea why. The fact that they thought that they captured Berdaichi, and then end up they sent troops without fire support towards Berdaichi and then got wiped out 2 times, because there's once already happening on the 1st, and then this happened on the 2nd. So the 2 videos, it could be on the same day as well. I just have to qualify because these are video being released. And as I always say, everything that you see on the internet is because someone wants you to see it. So this is the situation that is unfolding over at Badaichi. However, on the Russian side, the Ribas mapping continues to show that they have control over the entire Badaichi. So this is actually very very perplexing, because we still have no evidence that the Russians are inside, at least in the center of the western part of northern part of Badaichi. Similar situation over at Avdiivka as well. No Russian forces is spotted over on this northwestern part of Avdiivka based on any video footages. So we will continue to wait and see how these progress. But tentatively, I'm definitely leaning towards Deep State UA's version of events for now. But of course, Donenke, of course, this is already invalidated. The Russians are pushing a little bit more. We will continue to see how these progress. And what else to talk about? The Bakhmut Front is interesting because Ivaniivsky continues to be very underreported. But if you look at the information coming from Deep State UA, they say that if Bodanivka can be caught relatively stable, then Ivaniivsky is extremely bad, and it may end in the loss of the village. So they say that the Russians are preparing reserve to close in on Chasivya, and also becoming more active in the northern part of Klishevka, which is over here. So the Russian forces are, in their opinion, is actively trying to push in this direction towards Chasivya, and they are going to lose Ivaniivsky in the near future. So, which means that even in their assessment, which is similar to DPA's, this settlement is definitely unholdable by the Ukrainians right now. The situation is looking really, really bad as the Russians continue to push in across the entire front line within the village. And if you see the number of streets left and this industrial zone in the south, it's very unlikely that the Ukrainians can hold this, because the Russians have already captured this much over the past few days. So we will see how this progress. I think for the Ukrainians, it's probably safer to stay in the forest, but we shall see how this goes. Otherwise, what else? The Ukrainians is on a counter-offensive over at the Kupyansk Front. They're putting pressure on Sinkivka and Terbaivka. So particularly at Terbaivka, I think the situation is quite bad. As the Ukrainian forces claim to have taken this much, they have taken basically half of Terbaivka, which means that to capture the rest, let me change the color. To capture the rest here isn't really that far away. I think we will see the re-liberation of the liberation of Terbaivka very, very soon. So the re-liberation of Terbaivka. So we will see how this progress. The Russian forces definitely would not want them to destroy their PR effort, but we shall see. And what else can we talk about? I think that's about it, I guess. And also crinky holes, like crinky really holes, like holes, like Ukrainians basically drop the word crinky, to basically double down on it. So anyway, that's it. This is the summary. These are the conclusions. Thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next update.